إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. أما بعد، يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. ثم أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, we continue going over the hadith of Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, the hadith of the 5 pillars of Islam, the hadith of Buni al-Islam ala khamsa, that Islam has been built upon 5. Islam is built upon 5. We had reached the 4th pillar, not as enumerated inside of the hadith, but as brought in the usual ordering of the hadith. Because in the hadith, the 4th pillar that is mentioned is Hajjul Bayt, and making Hajj to the house. Whereas in the order that is usually mentioned, then the fasting of Ramadan usually is 4th. Or Sawm of Ramadan usually comes 4th. But inside of this particular narration, Hajjul Bayt comes before the mention of fasting the month of Ramadan. And we had explained that the ulama, they had mentioned and they have explained that the reason of this is that the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned the pillars, and that the pillars, they are of various types with regard to the types of worships that they are. And that the Prophet ﷺ, he began with the mention of the shahada. And that the shahada, it is a nutq bil lisan wa i'tiqad bil janan. It is an articulation of the tongue and it is a belief of the heart. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned as-salah. As-salah, it is amal, or it is an ibadah badaniyya. It is an act of worship that takes place upon the limbs. It is a limb-based act of worship. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned as-zakah. And zakah is ibadah maliyya. It is an act of worship that is financial. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned al-hajj, wal-hajj al-bayt, and making hajj to the house. And hajj is ibadah badaniyya wa maliyya. It is the ibadah that is an ibadah, an act of worship that takes place with the limbs, and a financial act of worship. And then lastly, he mentioned and fasting Ramadan. And Ramadan is an act of worship, ibadah badaniyya, an act of worship that takes place upon the limbs. So you find that the Prophet ﷺ, each time he mentioned a new category of worship, or a new category of worship, before he brought a reiteration, and the reiteration was brought last, and that was the ibadah badaniyah, which was the fasting of Ramadan. Because the fasting of Ramadan is ibadah badaniyah, like the salah, which is ibadah badaniyah. And this is why it was brought last. So it was, each time it was a new category from 1 to 4, and then the 5th, it was the reiteration of a category that was previously mentioned, which was the same as category number 2. And this is why the ulama, they say the wisdom on why it came in this particular order in this hadith. Ala kulli hal, Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan hafidhahullah ta'ala, when explaining the 5 pillars and explaining this particular hadith, he explains them in the traditional order, or the normal order in which they come from, or the the more ordinary order that they come, or the order in which they come, like in the hadith of Jibreel alayhi salatu wassalam, where the mentioning of the fasting of Ramadan comes before the mentioning of making hajj to the house. So the Shaykh, he mentions, he says, وَقَالْ, and he, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, وَصَوْمِ Ramadan, and fasting the month of Ramadan. Fasting the month of Ramadan. وَهُوَ رُكْنُ الرَّابِعِ, and it is the 4th pillar. And he mentioned this because it is the 4th pillar, right? And Shaykh Salih, hafidhahullah ta'ala, he wants to go in the order of the numbers of the pillars. Now, it is not his intention to go in the order as mentioned in the hadith, but to go in the numeric order of the numbers of the pillars, 1 through 5. And this is why he mentions the fasting of Ramadan here, because he wants to talk about the 4th pillar, which is the fasting in the month of Ramadan, to fast the month of Ramadan. وَهُوَ رُكْنُ الرَّابِعِ, and it is the 4th pillar, min arkan al-Islam, from the pillars of al-Islam. Naam. And fasting, Sawm Ramadan, wajibun. Fasting the month of Ramadan, it is wajib. Fasting Ramadan, it is wajib. Naam. Wajib ala kulli Muslim. It is wajib upon every Muslim. And I want everyone to pay very close attention and to understand this very well. Wajib ala kulli Muslim. Balighin. Every Muslim that is of the age of maturity, puberty. Naam. Every Muslim that is of the age of puberty. Aqil. Every Muslim that has a sound intellect. Naam. Sahih. Every Muslim that is healthy. He is sound in his health. Muqim. Every Muslim that is a resident. Naam. It is very important to understand. It's wajib if a person is of the age of puberty. Meaning that if they're not of puberty, it is not wajib upon them. Wajib if they have an intellect, if they're sound in their intellect. So, if they are not of sound intellect, if there's some mental retardation, then it's not wajib upon them. Wajib upon them if they are of sound health, if they are healthy. If they are sickly, then it is not wajib, it is not binding, obligatory upon them. Wajib upon them if they are a resident. So if they are a traveler, then it is not wajib, it is not obligatory upon them. Now, and we're going to go more in depth and detail about these things, or some depth and detail about these things. وَيَشْتَرِطْ فِي حَقِّ الْمَرْأَةِ, and it is stipulated and a condition as relates to the right of a woman, أَن تَكُونَ طَاهِرَةً, that she has to be pure. مِنَ الْحَيْضِ وَالنِّفَاسِ, she has to be pure from menstruation and postpartum bleeding. She has to be pure from her menses and from postpartum bleeding. Meaning that if she is on her menses or she has postpartum bleeding, then she doesn't fast during these days of menses and her postpartum bleeding, but she would make up these days later. She will make up these days later. Naam. As relates to the fasting, Shaykh Fawzan, he says that the fasting, it is from the fourth, or it is the fourth pillar of the pillars of Al-Islam. فَمَنْ كَانَ يَسْتَطِيعُ الصِّيَامَ أَدَاءً فَإِنَّهُ يَجِبُ عَلَيْهِ. Whoever he has the ability to fast during his time, he has the ability to fast, meaning during the month of Ramadan, because he has met the criterion to do so, then it is obligatory for him to fast during that time. Now, وَمَنْ كَانَ لَهُ عُذْرٌ, and whoever has an excuse, shar'i, he has a legislative excuse. Now, فَإِنَّهُ يُفْطِرُ وَيَقْضِي, then he would break his fast during those days and he will make them up later. Whoever has a legislative excuse. Those legislative excuses, for example, they are sick, right? They're not sound. They're not healthy. They're sick. Or they're not muqim. They're not a resident because they're traveling. Then they will make up those days later. Or legislative excuse because they are a woman and they are upon their menses. Or legislative excuse because they are a woman and they are upon their postpartum bleeding. Then they will make these days up later. As relates to the obligation and how it is binding, this is in accordance to Allah Ta'ala's statement, the dalil that it is wajib, that it is according to Allah Ta'ala's statement, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْهُ, and whoever from amongst you witnesses he sees the month, then he must fast it. This can be found in Surah Al-Baqarah and is verse 185. Whoever from amongst you sees the month of Ramadan, then he must fast it. He has to fast it. This is a proof that it is binding. It is obligatory to fast the month of Ramadan. Naam. As relates to the one who he is insane or he suffers from mental retardation or he is a child, then it is not obligatory upon him to fast. The proof of this is a statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. رفع القلم عن ثلاثة. رفع القلم عن ثلاثة. That the pen has been lifted from three. عن النائم حتى يستيقظ. From the one who is sleeping until he awakes. عن الصغير حتى يكبر. On the one who is small until he becomes big. وفي الرواية أخرى, in the side of another narration, حتى يحتلم, until he reaches puberty. So becomes big, it means until he reaches puberty, until he attains puberty. ويحتلم, يعني this is a sign of puberty, until he reaches that stage where he's a puberty. Naam. So this is the shahid, this is the point of reference for the child. So until the pen is lifted, until the small child he reaches the age of puberty. Naam. وعن المجنون حتى يعقل أو يفيق. And upon the one who is mentally insane until he regains his intellect or until he recovers his senses. Naam, for the one who is mentally insane, naam, either because they're suffering from some type of mental retardation or there's something that has arrested their intellect. There's some external factor, right, that has arrested their intellect, right? They're suffering from some type of insanity, whether that insanity was medically induced or because of a jinn or whatever the case may be, while they're insane, then the pin is lifted from them until they regain their sanity, As relates to those who they are born with mental retardation, then there's nothing upon them. There's nothing upon them. There are no responsibilities that are placed upon them. Now, so this is a proof and evidence that as relates to them, then there is not wajib upon them to fast. They're not called to fast. Now, so it's not from wisdom to have them fast. Right? So those who suffering from mental retardation, they are mentally challenged, then it is not from wisdom to make them fast. It's not from wisdom. But for them, then you have to feed them. You have to take care of them, and you have to treat them as they are to be treated, as according, and take care of their medical needs and so on and so forth. Now, and keep them on their regiment. This is very important. It's very important. With regards to the young people, and this is something that is a very, very important point, because some people, they're not balanced or they don't understand properly the proper rearing of the young as relates to this. Because they'll take the standpoint of, well, when it comes to the young, then we'll just let them frolic and play and eat and drink and to the end of it, and we won't encourage them to fast. And when I mean young, I don't mean toddlers, of course. We're not speaking about toddlers. We're speaking about 3-year-olds and 2-year-olds and 1-year-olds and so on and so forth. We're not speaking about toddlers and little babies. We're not talking about that. But I'm talking about your 7-year-olds and your 8-year-olds and so on and so forth. But yeah, those children who are of the age where they have some strength and they can fast. A child of 7 of age and so on and so forth, right? What we would still call a kid, Juyaanee is a child, a little child. But of course, this child is not of the age of puberty, no doubt about it. So we're not saying it's wajib for that child to fast. However, because it's not wajib for him to fast, then we're not going to say that, okay, we leave him. No, but rather there's a great training, there's a great opportunity now. The ulama, they explain that, and this was from the way of the sahabiyat, the women of the sahaba, is that they would train their young. They would train the young children to fast. They would train the young children to fast. Those young children, 7 years old, right? Like this, they would train them to fast. Why? So that fasting was not a problem for them when they reached the age of puberty. They were already acclimated to fasting. They were already used to fasting, so that by the time they reached the age of puberty, they were already accustomed to fasting. It's like covering and everything else, So by the time they're of the age of they have to cover, they're already accustomed to covering. You don't tell a girl all her life, okay, you don't have to cover. You're putting pigtails in her hair and barrettes and beads and braid and all that type of stuff, right? And then, right, and this all the while she's 11 and she's 12. Maybe she's a late bloomer, right? She's 12, right? And then all of a sudden now she's 12 and a half, 12 and 3/4, almost 13. And then, she becomes, the signs of puberty comes, and overnight now she sees signs of puberty and the like. And then now you tell her, oh, now you got to cover. She done lived 12, almost 13 years of her life, don't know nothing about a khimar, don't know nothing about a jilbab. Now you telling her to cover, and then you wonder why there's some feedback. You wonder why there's some pushback, because she's not accustomed to it. You're wondering why now she doesn't understand. What do you mean cover now? What do you mean now? Well, just an hour ago I didn't have to cover. Now I have to cover. Well, just yesterday I didn't have to cover. I went to bed yesterday, I didn't have to cover. Now I wake up this morning and we see some things now, and now I have to cover. I don't understand. I didn't have to cover yesterday. Now I don't get it. I don't understand. You understand? Now you're making things hard upon her. Whereas if she had been trained to cover from when she was little, now all she knows is covering. So by the time now where she has to cover, is no problem because she's already accustomed to covering. Likewise, when it comes to the fasting, we want to train our children and acclimate them to doing good, so that when it's binding upon them to do good, they're already used and accustomed to doing good. So now it's easy for them to do good and the like, right? So from this, the Sahabiyat, they used to train their children to fast well before it was binding upon them to fast. They would train them. Now they would train them, and this is very important. This is very important that we don't baby our children, because sometimes, we have this concept of babying our children, and that this is what it means to be a good parent. And this is not what it means to be a good parent, to spoil our children to their detriment, but to be good to our children, right? This will be by helping them to be good Muslims and help acclimating them to worshiping Allah Ta'ala and making it easy for them to worship Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala and the like. There comes a hadith that is mutafaqun alayh, and on the authority Rubay' bint Muawwidh, and Rubay' bint Muawwidh قالت رضي الله تعالى عنها, she said, أرسل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم غداة عاشوراء إلى قرى الأنصار, that in the morning of Ashura, which is the 10th of Al-Muharram, which is coming up soon, the 10th of Muharram, the day of Ashura is coming up soon, is a day of fasting. It's a day of fasting. That on the day of Ashura, the Prophet ﷺ, he sent a messenger to the village of the Ansar to inform them, من أصبح مفطرا فليتم بقية يومه. Whoever has woken up and he has eaten something, then let him finish off the rest of his day fasting. ومن أصبح صائما فليصم. And whoever has woken up and he was fasting, he has yet to eat, then let him continue to fast. Let him fast today. قالت, she said, فَكُنَّا نَصُومُهُ بَعْدْ. She said, so then after that, we fasted that day. We fasted that day. Not just that, but she went on and she said, وَنُصَوِّمُ صُبْيَانَنَا. And we made our small children fast that day. Not just we fasted that day, but we also made our small children fast that day. And I want you to listen, to the wisdom of the Sahabiyat, of the female Sahaba. She said, وَنَجْعَلُ لَهُمْ اللُّعْبَ مِنَ الْعِهْنِ. She said, and we made for them wool toys. We made for them woolen toys. Toys out of wool. نعم. فإذا بكى أحدهم على الطعام أعطيناه ذلك حتى يكون عند الإفطار. She said, and if one of them began to cry over food, then we gave them the toy to play with until it was time to break fast. Then we gave them the toy to play with until it was time to break fast. Yeah, they gave them the toy to play with, so what? So as to distract them from their hunger, until it was time to break fast. You see this now? This is how a good parent is with the child. They don't baby the child and say, oh, look, he's hungry, right? And then they start to baby them. But rather what? They gave them the toy, play with the toy, distract them, right? Until it was time to break fast. Why? So as to acclimate them, to get them used to fasting and worshiping Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Because all of us know, right? By the time an individual starts to feel the hunger during the day of the fast, those hours or that time period that you have before you can actually eat, it's not going to hurt you to wait that time frame to eat. It's not going to hurt you in the least. You understand? It's not going to hurt you. So giving a child a toy to play with until it's time to break his fast, it's not going to hurt that child. The child is not hurt in the least by that. But by giving them that toy to play with and distract them from the little bit of pain to hunger that they're experiencing, and acclimating them to being able to deal with that and to overcome that, and training them to be patient with that little bit of pain of hunger, because after that little, you feel the pain of hunger for a little bit of time, and then what happens? It goes away. You don't feel it no more. It's gone. You forgot about it, right? You forgot about the pain. You understand? So to train them and to teach them that valuable lesson, that you feel it for a little bit, then it goes away, and acclimate them and teach them how to be patient over this, and train them how to be patient and being obedient unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is a life lesson, and that which is beneficial to them, greater, more beneficial, more outstanding than any level and any degree of any type of spoiling ever. You understand? This was a tremendous manner and way in which they used to treat their children. And this is a very, 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 very important lesson. Very, very, very important lesson for us to know and to understand and to keep in mind. Bidnillahi ta'ala. One thing to point out is that, as relates to the voluntary fast, then it is okay to wake up without having the intention to fast that day, and then to make the intention to fast that day after Fajr. But as relates to the obligatory fast in Ramadan, or the obligatory fast that you're making up from Ramadan, either the obligatory fast for Ramadan, or if you're making up a fast because you missed a day in Ramadan because you were sick, or if you're a woman, you're on your menses and so on and so forth, and you're making up a day, then you have to have that intention before Fajr. You have to have that intention before Fajr. So for the obligatory fast, you have to have the intention before Fajr. You can't have it after Fajr. It has to be before Fajr. And this is according to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, from the hadith of Hafsa radiyallahu ta'ala anha, "Man lam yabitu صائم min al-layl fala siyama lahu." Whoever does not have the intention of fasting from the night, فَلَا صِيَامْ لَهُ, then there is no fasting for him. Hadithun Sahih Rawahu Abu Dawud, is a hadith that has been collected by Imam Abu Dawud. So with regards to the obligatory fast, then you have to have the intention prior to Fajr. You have to have the intention from the night before. But for a voluntary fast, then you can have the intention after Fajr. So I just wanted to point that particular point out. Right? That makes sense? Clear? Well, طيب. Khair. So this as relates to the child. As relates to the child in fasting. Na'am. Shaykh Fawzan, hafidhullah ta'ala, he says, وَالَّذِي لَهُ عُذْرٌ, but for the one who has an excuse. So now we're speaking about those who have an excuse. Or we're continuing to speak about those who have an excuse. Because no doubt the child has an excuse, right? Because he's a child. The one who is mentally insane or suffering from retardation has an excuse because he doesn't have aql, he's not aqil. Na'am. Who else is from those who have an excuse? Al-Marid, the one who is sick. The one who is sick. Na'am. Likewise, the one who is traveling. The Shaykh, he says, كَالْمَرِيض الَّذِي لَا يَسْتَطِيعُ الصِّيَامِ, the sick who does not have the ability to fast. You understand? The sick person who does not have the ability to fast. The ulama, they explain that if a person is sick with a type of sickness, that fasting will not be a detriment to him and adversely affect him, then he has the choice. So if he wants to fast, he can fast. If he's sick, but it is not the type of sickness that will adversely affect him, then it's his choice. If he wants to, he can fast. But if he's sick with the type of sickness that he does not have the ability to fast, he can't fast. It's too difficult for him. It's too hard for him to fast. Or he's sick with the type of sickness that he has to take medicine at a particular period of time, right? Because of his sickness, that doesn't allow him to fast. Doesn't allow him to fast, right? Like he's suffering from some type of stomach sickness, so he has to take a particular medicine to keep his stomach coated, like he's suffering from ulcer or something like this, right? The ulcer is going to heal, you understand? But he has to keep his stomach coated so that the ulcer does not eat through the stomach lining. So he has to keep his stomach coated. So he has to take his medicine every whatever hours or whatever. So he can't fast while he's on that regimen of medicine until his stomach it heals. You understand? So this person, he can't fast. He doesn't have the ability until his stomach heals. That make sense? Like, so this person, he can't fast. So for him, he doesn't have a choice. He can't fast. Al musafir, or the person who is traveling. Al masafa qasar. He's traveling a travel that you will shorten your prayer during that travel. He's traveling a travel that you will shorten your prayer. So he's traveling, yeah? He's traveling a travel that you will shorten your prayer. فَإِنَّهُ يُفْطِرُ مِنْ رَمَضَانِ في قدر الحاجة ثم يقضي في أيام الأخر. Then he will break his fast in Ramadan and he will make up those days later. لقوله تعالى, according to Allah Ta'ala's statement, وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. And whoever is sick or he is upon a travel, then he will make up those days later. With regards to the sick one, we have already touched upon him briefly. With regards to the one who is traveling, what is better? For the one who is traveling, what is better for him? Is it better for him to break his fast? Or is it better for him to continue his fast? The ulama, they say, الأفضل للمسافر إن لم يجد مشقة أن يصوم. If he does not find any difficulty, then it is better for him to fast. وإن وجد مشقة أن يفطر. But if he finds difficulty, then it's better for him to break his fast. If the one who is traveling, if he does not find difficulty, then it is better for him. Listen to the word I'm using. Listen to what they say. Al-afdal is better for him to break his fast. Excuse me. If he doesn't find difficulty, if he does not find difficulty, it's better for him to fast. If he does not find difficulty, then it's better for him to continue to fast. And if he finds difficulty, then it's better for him to break his fast. That's what is best, right? But in any event, it's important for you to understand that as long as he is a traveler, whether it's hard or not, he has the allowance to break his fast. As long as he's a traveler, fi'lan, whether it's hard or it's not hard, the choice is yours. You can break your fast. You understand? Whether it's hard or not, the choice is yours. You want to break it, break it. Because the difficulty may be a factor or may not be a factor. And that is as relates to what is best. When they speak about what is best, the difficulty comes into it. You understand? Difficulty comes into it when you speak about what is best. I don't want you to confuse that as relates to the allowance. The allowance is there as long as you're a traveler. The allowance is there as long as you're a traveler. The issue of what is best, then that's when you talk about if it's difficult or not, then do this and then that. That makes sense? That makes sense? Like, another issue we want to bring up, because people ask, if you're traveling through time zones, then in cases like that, it's easier for you to break your fast. Due to what? The confusion. Because you're traveling through time zones. You could be going either back or you could be going forward. So now, depending on where you're going in the world, you could be fasting a 20-something hour day, or you could be fasting like a 4-something hour day, depending on where you're going, 5, 6 hours, depending upon where you're going in the world. You understand? So a situation like that is what? It's better for you what? To break your fast. It's simpler, less confusing, and so on and so forth. But at a kulli hal, you being a traveler, the discretion is yours. If you break your fast and you make the day up, when? Later. Make the day up later. But back to the issue of what is best. Back to the issue of what is best, based upon difficulty or not. Remember, if it is easy, then what's better for you to do? Is to do what?
If it is easy,
then you continue.
It's better for you to continue.
Alright, if it's difficult, then it's better for you. Then you break the fast. But what's the proof? You need proof, right? What's the proof? Of course, it's Sunnah. Nah, but what's the proof? You see, it's very important you have a proof. And I want you always to remember this. Anytime somebody get in front of you and they start saying stuff, you gotta say, "What's your proof?" Then that sounds good. That principle sounds nice. You say that sounds good. It makes sense. But what is it based on? What's the proof of that? Where are you getting that from? Sounds good, but where's that from? Right? I don't ever want you to say, I don't care who it is, to just sit there and say, "Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, yeah," and then move on. No, say it. Okay, sounds good. But I didn't hear Qala Allah. I didn't hear Qala Rasulullah. I didn't hear Qala Sahaba. So before you move on, brother, please mention to us where you getting that from. Who from the ulama extracted that point? From where? Like, it's very important. Very important. The proof comes from the hadith of Abdis Salaam al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. From the hadith that is mutafaqun alayh. قال, the great Sahaba Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, كنا نغزو مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said we were on a battle expedition with the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم في Ramadan. He said in the month of Ramadan, in Ramadan. He said فَمِنَّا صَائِمُ, and from amongst us there were those who were fasting. There were individuals who were fasting. وَمِنَّا مُفْطِرُ, and there were from us individuals who were not fasting, right? You see, we were with the Prophet ﷺ on a battle expedition in Ramadan. So that means they were what? They were traveling. They were traveling. Where? When? In Ramadan. He said they were from us those who were fasting, and they were from us those who were not fasting. From who? From the Sahaba. Some of the Sahaba were fasting, some of them were not fasting, right? He said, فَلَا يَجِدُ الصَّائِمُ عَلَى مُفْطِرٍ وَلَا مُفْطِرْ عَلَى الصَّائِمِ. He said, and the one who was fasting didn't find fault with the one who was breaking his fast, and the one who broke his fast didn't find fault with the one who was fasting. Nobody was blaming no one else. You see the understanding of the Sahaba? He said, يَرَوْنَ أَنَّ مَنْ وَجَدَ قُوَّةً فَصَامَ فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ حَسَنٌ وَيَرَوْنَ أَنَّ مَنْ وَجَدَ ضَعْفًا أَفْطَرَ فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ حَسَنٌ. And that's where we get, this is where we get the principle from. He said, and they saw that whoever found strength, then he fasted, and that was good. That was better. And whoever found weakness, then he broke his fast. And they saw that as being good. They saw that as being better. That's where the principle comes from. If you find the strength when you're traveling, then you fast. And that's better. If you find when you're traveling weakness, then you break your fast. And that's what? Then that's better for you. Right? Because we know that traveling is a piece of punishment. You be traveling, you be eating, sahwalillah, and you still get the massive headache, you still get a migraine, right? And you eating. You ate breakfast, you drank the coffee in a plane, and ate the chip they gave you and all that. And you still got a headache, your stomach still hurt, right? All kind of problems. And you're eating. So now imagine now you're fasting now. You may experience these things, or you may not. Or you may not. Right? Ala kulli hal, if you find the strength, then it's better for you to fast. If you don't find the strength, you find weakness with you, then it's better for you to break your fast. Don't be like those people who don't understand, they don't have fiqh of the religion, and then they run themselves ragged unnecessarily. You find it's rampant with Ahlul Bid'ah. They run themselves ragged. They don't have fiqh of the religion, and they thinking this is from righteousness. Even though the Prophet said, even though the Prophet said it is not from righteousness to fast during travel. Meaning what? It's not from righteousness to fast during travel when you're putting yourself in harm's way. You're fasting during travel, you're putting yourself to a detriment. That's not a sign of righteousness. That is a sign that you don't have understanding of the religion. That's a sign you don't have understanding of the religion. Because Allah wants for you easiness, He does not want for you difficulty. He wants for you ease, He does not want for you difficulty. Naam. Tayyib? That makes sense? Khayr. So this as relates to those who are traveling. In brief, yani, and again, this is just in brief. When it comes to the ahkam of fasting, there's a lot of details that go with it, but we just want to give you some, just some points. Just some points. Shaykh Fawzan, hafidhahullah ta'ala, he says, فَلَا بُدْ مِنْ صَوْمِ رَمَضَانِ. He says, so you have to fast Ramadan. إِمَّا أَدَاءً وَإِمَّا قَضَاءً لِأَهْلِ الْأَعْذَارِ. He says, so you have to fast Ramadan. Either you're going to fast it in its time by performing it, fasting it in Ramadan, or you're going to fast it by making it up later outside of Ramadan. Naam. He said, وَلَا يَجُوزُ تَرْكُ الصِّيَامِ بِحَالٍ مِنَ الْأَحْوَالِ. He said, and it's not permissible to abandon fasting for any reason under any circumstance. It's not permissible. He said, مَا دَامَ عَقْلُ الْإِنسَانِ بَاقِيًا. He said, باقيًا. He said, as long as a person's intellect is there. فَإِنَّهُ لَا بُدْ أَنْ يَصُومَ إِذَا كَانَ يَقْدِرُ عَلَى الصِّيَامِ. As long as the individual has an intellect, then he has to fast as long as he has the ability to do so. As long as he has the ability to do so. وَأَمَّا إِذَا كَانَ لَا يَقْدِرُ عَلَى الصِّيَامِ. He said, but if he does not have the ability to do so, فَإِنْ كَانَ لِعُذْرٍ يُرْجَى زَوَالُهُ. Then if it is for a reason that he anticipates that it'll go away, فَإِنَّهُ يُفْطِرُ وَيَقْضِي. Then he will eat during that day and he will make that day up later. Again, if he doesn't have the ability to fast that particular day in Ramadan, but it's due to a legislative reason that he anticipates that it will go away, like he has the flu. Flu only lasts a week or so, right? Then he will eat for those days that he's sick, and then he'll make up those days later, right? He says, وَإِنْ كَانَ لِعُذْرٍ لَا يُرْجَى زَوَالُهُ مَعَ بَقَاءِ عَقْلِهِ وَفِكْرِهِ فَإِنَّهُ يُطْعِمْ عَنْهُ. He said, but if he has an excuse that he does not anticipate that it will go away, and this is with his intellect remaining there, and his thinking, his mind remaining there. He said, then he will feed a poor person for every day. Then he will feed someone for every day. لِقَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى, according to Allah Ta'ala's statement, وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ. And on those who don't have the ability to do it, then they will feed a poor person. Then they will feed a poor person. نعم. فَيُطْعِمُوا عَنْ كُلِّ يَوْمٍ مِسْكِينًا. Then they will feed a poor person for every day. And this is for who? This is for example, the poor person. This, for example, the old person. The old person who has his intellect. Who has intellect. We're not talking about the old person who's suffering from dementia, right? Alzheimer's, who no longer has an intellect. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the old person who has his intellect, but they are such of an age of senility that they don't have the ability to fast. Then for this old person, they don't fast in Ramadan, but they feed a person for every day. They feed a person for every day. Now, so if Ramadan that year was 29 days, they feed 29 poor people. If Ramadan that day was 30 days rather. If Ramadan that year was 30 days, then they feed 30 poor people. But likewise, those people who have sicknesses that they don't anticipate that they are going to be cured from. There's no known cure for them now. There's no known cure for them that we know of now. Right? And I say there's no known cure that we know of. Why? Because the Prophet said, لِكُلِّ دَاءٍ دَوَى. For every disease, there's a cure. You know, those who know, those who don't know. Those who know, those who don't know, don't know. Now, على كل حال, if a person is sick from a sickness that we don't know the cure of it, they don't anticipate to be cured of it in their lifetime, right? Then they feed a poor person for every day. They don't fast. You understand? They don't fast. Those people who suffer from sicknesses that don't allow them to fast, then they feed a poor person for every day in the month of Ramadan. Now, they feed a poor person. على كل حال, everybody has something to do as relates to the month of Ramadan. Either they're going to be fasting during this month, or they're going to be fasting outside of the month, making the days up later, or they're going to be feeding poor people, right? For every day that they don't fast, because they have a legislative excuse that doesn't allow them to fast. And this is something that is very important, because if a person is sick with a sickness that if they were to fast, it will have an adverse effect upon their health, they are not allowed to fast. You understand? If a person runs the risk of going into a diabetic coma for not fasting, because if they fast, they are not allowed to fast. It's not from righteousness for them to put their life in danger by fasting when they're not obligated to fast, rather not allowed to fast. So it's not righteousness to put yourself in danger in that situation. But if you did that, then you'll be wrong. You'll be wrong. Man, it's a very important point. Not allowed to. Person suffers from some type of stomach ailments and this and that and that. And then they fast, and then they get a bleeding ulcer, and they start subhanallah, have all type of problems now, because they fasted when the Muslim doctors have repeatedly told them that they can't. Then they have done something that is wrong, because they had a legislative excuse. So they should have fed the poor people. That's their ibadah. That's what they do in Ramadan. They feed the poor people. They don't fast. They feed the poor people. Why? Because they can't fast. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has tested them with a sickness. So their ibadah in Ramadan is to feed the poor people. It's not to fast. It's to feed the poor people. You understand? Everyone has their ibadah in Ramadan. If you can't fast because you have a legislative excuse, then you feed the poor people. If you are strong and you can fast, then you fast. You can't say I'm going to feed poor people. You can't feed the poor people because you can fast. So for you, you fast, right? You don't have that. You don't have that option. That option is no longer there. That has been abrogated. You don't have that option. You have to fast. That's your ibadah. You fast. Okay? You fast upon that. Now you become 80, 90 years old. You understand? Now you old man. You can't fast no more. Okay, now you feed poor people. But now you're young. You're healthy. Now you fast. Now it's fasting time for you. You understand? طيب. على كل حال. The Shaykh he moves on to the last pillar, Hajj al-Bayt, and to make Hajj to the house. لكن نتوقف هنا فنكتفي بهذا القدر وصلى وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. جزاكم الله خيرا.